Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 202 of Rush Roundtable. Man, it has been a while, but we are so excited to be back. Today, we're going to be talking about the ninth track from their Counterparts album, Leave That Thing Alone. This is a really, really cool instrumental in Rush's discography, and in my personal opinion, has one of the greatest Geddy Lee bass performances of all time. I'm sure we'll indulge plenty in that in a little bit, but we have an amazing panel as always. Today, we have Rob, Alex, and Tal. Welcome to the episode. So excited to have you here to discuss this song. So let's just kind of get right into it. This is going to be a little bit of a weird one because we don't really have a whole lot of lyrics to bounce off of, obviously, because it's an instrumental. So bear with us as we kind of loosely use like verse chorus to kind of describe where we are with these sections in the song. But anyways, let's kind of just get right into it. So the song opens up with intro between Neil and Alex on guitar. Just a nice little vibe to kind of set the tone, and a nice little organ kind of in the back, just vamping a chord, really setting this kind of chill atmosphere. Counterparts is kind of a little bit of a darker album, I guess, kind of thematically. In some of the songs, they get a little bit deeper and introspective. And this song, while it's still kind of bouncy and groovy, I feel like the specific like tone color of everything, it kind of keeps it in that kind of moodier feel. I really like that with this instrumental compared to something like a YYZ that's super energetic. And then coming right off of that, Geddy Lee comes in with a big swooping bass line that kind of brings the whole song together. So, what do you guys think of the start of this song?
Hmm. I just like some of the the interplay between what's happening between the melody that, well, it's actually not really a melody yet, so to speak, it's just Alex's chords, but that interaction between guitar and bass is really cool. And it kind of shows a little bit of like how they kind of started putting the song together. They even joked about this on the Counterparts world premiere on the radio, I guess October 14th, 1993. They were talking about how they would keep, Neil out of the whole rhythmic thing because they were trying to get some rhythmic ideas together. And so you can kind of hear the fun they had with creating the song from the beginning of this track. And Neil had to kind of hear this stuff after the fact and put his parts in to kind of create more of a composition. So I like the funness and the levity of, like you mentioned, Ryder, just it's a bit of a different space that they were playing in compared to the subject matter of the album. So I like that tone right off the bat. Sounds really, really fun.
I actually looked at one of our older videos a little while ago where Tal and I were talking about Red Tide and Hand Over Fist. And that's where Hand Over Fist was supposed to be this, So it was basically at the end of the 80s, they're saying, we need to get back into instrumentals. Hey, let's write this funky thing. Hey, here's some lyrics. All right, let's do that on the next album. So now we got, where's my thing? And then so you have like almost this trilogy of back to the instrumentals. And with Where's My Thing, it was a little more tense. I mean, rhythmically, what the guitar was doing, I mean, D7, E minor, and even kind of like the rhythm was a little stabby. Whereas this rhythm, a little more laid back, still 16th notes, still he's got a little bit more of that free form thing going as far as the guitar goes in this beginning, and just basically A minor, A minor add nine type of thing.
With this song, I think of as like kind of like, the balls are back. Like, it's the return of Getty's jazz bass, a very full, heavy sound. I'm not entirely sure what the thing is and where's my thing, leave that thing alone, but maybe you can think of it as leave that wall bass alone or leave that Steinberger alone. Back to the jazz bass we go. Of course, I've said in previous roundtables that I love the wall bass with all my heart, but I think for this one, with that really gutsy kind of feel, I think I think Ged chose right, and I don't think it would sound the same with a thinner or more or like a I guess the jazz bass is very trebly, but at the same time, it's also got that really deep and like gnarly low end that the other basses kind of lacked. Um, but yeah, it's this start really hooks me in every single time. I love that little synth patch. I have a little fun fact about that synth patch I'd like to share a little bit later. But But yeah, just it's a great start. Simple, but I want to listen to the rest, when I hear it.
Yeah, it's might seem like a pretty like simple groove if you look at it from the top, but the interplay between all the musicians, it just makes this really like kind of dense, funky, rhythmic. It's just amazing. I love the vibe that's set up by the song, which said vibe switches up a little bit. Once Geddy Lee runs through his bass line a couple of times, we move into like a bit more of it's still like same speed, but a bit more of an atmospheric section. These big swooping synth strings come in, and Alex comes in with this really strong lead line. Really these super soaring like passages juxtaposed to the more low key verses, I guess. It's really interesting and moves the song in a bunch of really unique places. What do you think about these little slower sections right here, kind of breaking up the pace?
I like the tones of both Geddy and Alex on this section. And of course, with Neil having his acoustic kit and the interspersing of the electronic sounds is really nice. He kind of is really very conscious of that, like where he is putting his drum parts with respect to Geddy and Alex. And Alex has a very wet sound, and that's the contrast with Geddy. So more dry, but is an affected bass. It's got a little bit of distortion on it, but that again, that counterplay, if I to use the word again, is really nice. It just fits. You couldn't really think of any other sound that would be in that section. I think that's the mastery of that part, is that the tonal things are so locked in and they make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure Alex will have stuff to say about the theory and chords that he uses, but I really I want to say something just about how dreamy it sounds, like, just sound wise, tone wise. So this was recorded, of course. This was like the tail end of Alex's PRS era. I think. Well, I guess Vapor
Still the
Trails and
beginning.
Test Rock and Vapor Trails he also recorded on his CE24. But in fact, the PRS CE24 was the only guitar Alex used to play that song live, even on the Time Machine tour. When he was back to Gibson guitars almost solely, he still played the PRS for Leave That Thing Alone. I think because the solo, he needs the high F sharp, the 24 fret PRS for that. But just in general, it seems like the PRS has that, really kind of light, sorry, vibrato. I kind of think of it like sort of like the bravado solo sound, that I feel like no his Les Paul or Strat just wasn't able to quite replicate like that PRS was. I'm not sure what that guitar quite does different, but in addition to those synth strings, those patches, um, and Neil's very simple but effective drum line on the ride cymbal to just make it sound like you're ascending in heaven in that part. And I think it's really, really well done and an excellent contrast from the beginning. And I love how it comes back later in the song with a little more punch to it, a little bit more fills from Geddy and from Neil. But in this beginning one, it's like they're sort of laying down the base for what's going to come next. But it's sort of a good preview.
Like Tal just said, the one of the appeals for the PRS, especially back then, was he had the high notes. He had the 24th fret, the 23rd fret available on the PRS. At that time frame, PRS only offered 24 fret guitars, so it was the CE Maple Top and the CE that were available. The necks were quite thin and really comfortable to play. Those bridges stayed in tune literally for days, no matter how much you went nuts with the bar. So it was just, you couldn't not use that bar and get some vibrato ahead. And then the melody that we're talking about right now, very A minor in its descending line. He pretty much hangs on mostly chord tones, throws in a little F action because they actually bring in a chord progression, leaving that A minor, A minor 9, or add 9, sorry, vamp, where it's like, oh, we got an A minor, a G, E minor, F type of thing going, which certainly that's, fleshed out with Geddy and with the high leads. But yeah, I mean, the PRS, it's the sort of thing where what made him go back to the Les Pauls was the punch, that low end, that beefiness, of course. A lot of people and myself back then, when I bought mine, we were thinking that PRS, it's kind of like a Les Paul meets Strat, the idea of the better parts of both. So at that point, the sound leaned into Strat with humbuckers as opposed to Les Paul humbuckers, which you can mess with EQ. I mean, yeah, it's not the foundational sound, but it's a distinct sound. And it definitely became a 90s sound because, Lifeson began using PRS in 91, 90-ish. Still stayed with them through the end of the 90s, but, more and more people started using Larry Lalonde from Primus and the guys from, Jimmy's Chicken Shack and, all sorts of bands. PRS just became a guitar for the 90s, basically.
Yeah, such a super, super cool moment. I love whoever mentioned the use of Neil's electronics, just the super intricate rhythms and just the specific patches that he used create so much air and just space within the rhythm, but there's still so much there. It's just amazing. So after another repeat of that section, we then get this pretty intense bridge build up. If I'm not mistaken, the time signature switch is right here. And then we move into this just Geddy Lee's solo section where he just runs through the bass line of the forthcoming bridge, which the bridge is this is where things get a little bit more intense. If the little chorus section was the sort of dreaminess, this has got to be like a nightmare. This is because it gets super dark. The rhythm gets kind of uneasy, just opposed to what we've seen earlier. Just a really, really cool section. So what do you guys think of this little heavier bridge right here?
I think Count Floyd would probably call this a very scary section because you got that nice organ patch in there. It's really very befitting. What's that?
Let's hear that synthesizer or something.
Yeah, with that guy dancing around the synthesizer. So that part's like really, it's kind of creepy and very apropos for this time of year. I think it's like a kind of fall tune, I guess. And so I like that spookiness there, and it really kind of, I guess, provides a little bit of levity too. It's kind of funny in a way, but I definitely like the mood change. It's much more dark, and I think it's in E minor in that section too. I think it's like a modal type of scene in there, getting off the A minor trip. So it's really, I definitely appreciate that section. I think they all kind of, and even the way Neil plays in there is so good. He wanted to get that little bit, jazz kind of flavor in there. I think that was really, he wants to add that in just to make it more fun in a way. And they love doing these instrumentals anyway because there's a level of fun in creating them and how fast they come together. And then having Neil step in with his part, provides even more contrast to everything that's happened before. So I really appreciate this section pretty much. So.
There was a Modern Drummer article where Neil said with this, he built the rhythm around, and I have the quote on the screen here. He built the rhythm built around rhythm and blues bass drum interplay, but to make an original, I had to change up the parts. In the second verse, I go into a Nigerian beats, like something you'd hear on a King Sunny Aid record.
Yes.
And then he says, referencing going into his words, quasi jazz pattern, which, were for their own entertainment, in that respect. And then making it even a more interesting piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, it's not really related. Actually, I mean, that makes total sense. But I was just thinking, on their previous instrumental, Where's My Thing? There's actually, of course, we know there's also kind of a little jazz swingy section there, but it's a very similar drum pattern by Neil. But it's funny how he's able to reuse things, but still, it doesn't necessarily mean that the part of the song is going to sound the same. So he's doing those little triples on the ride, and some snares on offbeats, but it's a totally different feel because on Where's My Thing, it's kind of fun, funky, exciting, childish. But here, with those organ patches, it's a little more like let's catch you off guard right now. I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, but it is a very similar pattern by Neil, and no electronics this time around. He doesn't hit any electronic drums in that part.
Yeah, that whole section. I like how you brought up the Where's My Thing comparison, because to me at least it highlights a little bit more like the importance of not only composition but production in music, which once again we can use this as a moment to highlight just the brilliant production on this album. Oh my goodness, it is like otherworldly. This has to be one of the greatest albums like from a production standpoint, in my humble opinion.
Yes.
This, especially in this moment, it's such a dense arrangement with these huge piano chords and organs crashing down, and everyone is still so clear and so upfront. It's amazing that nobody gets muddled up in this section. It's great, and I'm so glad that the production is beefier, especially in terms of the drums and the bass, because that defined low end really, like when Rush decides to get heavy, that's what makes Rush Rush, is that super defined low end. And I think right here, just it's the production allows it to be even clearer, just put it on full display, like what's really going on between these guys. Just a cool part right here. But then coming after, right after that bridge, we get a little solo by Alex coming out right over here to bring us out of the bridge, get a little like reprise, and then bring us back into the outro theme. So anyone got anything about this guitar solo?
Rob?
Oh, it's beautiful. To be very blunt, I guess. No, it's really very atmospheric. I love it's even more, it seems more wet in this section than when he first plays the melody. So it's like, I guess that was the thing too, with he wanted to have his certain effects in recording process. And I can see where all the fights come through, because when you try to mix these things, it can be a little tricky, having, your sounds in the studio when you play, but it's super, super, reverby. It's just great. And his use of vibrato, the bar is, again, sort of his signature sound, coming right out of the 80s, and he's bringing it right back into the 90s. So that whole counter melody to his opening melody was something nice too, that I kind of picked up on, like, oh, that's cool. It's a different key, but
Yeah, more modulation.
Yeah.
More B minor, kind of in some ways, kind of an E Dorian also.
Mhm.
So he's
and
moving
key change
back.
is something you don't hear very often. It's like something that most tunes don't really modulate to something else. They kind of stay in a certain framework. So to hear that key change provided another mood yet again in the song. So
I mean, they've done that a bit, and I feel like in analyzing this, I almost feel like this is. I feel like I could say that it's a lot like, in my head, a lot like would be a Strangiato, but obviously a much more modern version, where they had their different sections in their themes, and not exactly, obviously it's not like a carbon copy at all, but the idea of, I feel like, just from the point of view where, well, we're going to change this up here, we're going to have this modulation here, we're going to do this here, we got this theme here, especially with the idea that he has, like for Life's, and he begins with the funkiness, same as Where's My Thing, same as Hand Over Fist, and then has that a low riff, has a couple of low riffs basically, as far as an E minor riff and an A minor riff actually. And then, yeah, like as Tail said earlier, the solo pretty much is in that mid area, that 7th fret, and he works his way up to the 24th fret, goes up to a high bend on the 24th, so he grabs that F sharp that would be a 26th fret, and then drops back down to the 24 as they change back into basically the E minor riff. So, and much like the first solo in Livia Strangiato, he has the atmospherics and then brings in a bunch of extra notes, basically. Well, not extra, I shouldn't say extra. They're appropriate, but more notes. So, just my take.
Yeah, I also want to bring up Neil's amazing use of restraint on this, because a lot of times he adds his own little flavor and some fills and some kind of little groovy sections to Alex's solos. Free Will is a great example of that, like Marathon, with that funky hi-hat work. But in this one, he totally stays with just well, it's in a weird time signature, but it's like eighth notes on the ride and kick on every single note, bump, 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 bump. So it kind of gives you that low end on every single eighth note. And then every so often, on a downbeat, he hits a that goes like, so so it sort of makes it accentuates Alex's playing very well. Like for I don't. Sometimes I wonder if that stuff, if he planned that stuff, or if they do it one take and think, oh, that's good. But no, it's cool because it's almost like he knows what Alex is gonna do. So it's like, oh, Alex is gonna go up another couple frets. So I'm gonna hit a big explosion to to sort of hype him up, So I think that was a really, really cool touch by him. And Getty also is probably his bass wise, it's probably his most relaxed part of the song. He's not really doing anything too crazy. He might be sneaking a couple more flamencos in there. I don't really know for sure, but it's not really his, like, the most of the song is his time to shine. So he's giving Lurks that moment. But it's like, it's a great example of a solo. It does not need so many notes to be memorable. In fact, it's one of my favorite Rush solos, just because of the composition, because, now I lay me down in dreamland. It just sounds so incredible. And it's it's like, it's kind of like, it's not everything needs to, blow me away like a La Villa Strangiato or a Free Will in terms of the shredding side. I talked about this, I've talked about this before, but I totally dig just a sick ass melody, and I think that one really delivers, and especially with the range of frequencies from that punchy low end from the bass and kick drum all the way up to the high F sharp on the PRS. It's just an incredible range of like of sounds, and it always makes them sound way fuller than a three piece when they do that, and they really mastered that, in my opinion. So just excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
That's the benefit. That I was going to say, that's the benefit of playing with someone for almost 20 years is, one, you know what they're going to do. So you can basically work with them intuitively. And two, 20 years into a career, it's like, do we have to show off? We'll just play music.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sometimes all you need is that super tight groove. I've used, not saying that I've like copied off of Leave That Thing Alone, but in creating instrumental songs, there's a lot of pressure in like trying to make sure that the parts weave together cohesively. And I like what you guys have brought up about the recurring themes within this song, like certain Alex guitar lines that get reiterated on as time goes on, and like other things like that. I love the use of like revisiting themes in this track and just how it kind of brings everything around full circle. It really shows their strength as composers in the sense of being able to use like just a couple of melodies, but develop them and create just expand these ideas so much more. And while Leave That Thing Alone, like you guys said, might not be a La Villa Strangiato, it does the same techniques in like reusing not necessarily reusing, but reiterating on like guitar lines and bass passages, like things like that from earlier in the song. And I think that if people look at these in relation to like a La Villa Strangiato, simpler instrumentals, you'll be able to find all the really amazing composition work that's at play here. I really like this song for that reason. So then coming out of the solo, there's a little reprise of that, just that bridge vamp. And then we end on a little bit of a mix between the verse and the chorus, just a little bit more, like Tal said earlier, less dreamy, more direct. And then we end on a fade out bass solo, which I think is fantastic. There's so much great Getty on this track. It's just phenomenal. All the obviously the bass work is insane within the verses, how he holds back a little bit more in the chorus sections, and when Alex plays, I think he suits the song perfectly. The jazz bass was definitely the right move for not only the song but this whole album. That super defined direct low end and just the really high defined highs and mid range. It's just unbelievable how great this bass sounds on this track. And also to discuss all the different keyboard work on here too. Super groovy, super atmospheric when it needs to. Getty is just absolutely on fire on this track. I just wish this fade out bass solo wasn't a fade out and was a little bit more developed, because I feel like as it starts to get more interesting is when the fade out really starts happening. I've not always been a fan of Rush fade outs. I think they've had a couple of ones that have been done tastefully, but this part is kind of the only part I don't really like about this studio track. But what do you guys think about the whole ending, and I guess kind of just your thoughts on the song in general?
Well, I have a quick bone to pick with you, Ryder. You just,
Oh,
at the end, talking about Getty's bass solo, we completely skipped over that wicked fill by Neil as a drummer. Not so happy about
oh,
that. Kidding, of course. But I've done a cover of this song on my YouTube channel a while back, and that I always just wait for that fill to happen because it's just so fun to play, so fun to nail. And then there's a quick electronic hit, and then another electronic hit, and then back to the crash. It's like 3 seconds, but it's like you're like wiped out after that little fill. But it's a perfect segue, in my opinion, into Getty's ending. But that's like Neil's last little bit of, oh, just a reminder, I'm playing drums in this song. And then, you know,
Yeah, he
so
held back a little too much in the Alex solo. He had to flex one more time before the end of the track. That little electronic hit, that like right at the end. I have been
love it.
trying to find that. I kid you not, literally for a year and a half, I've been trying to figure out that sample. If any of you guys in the comments know where that sample is from, I've heard it in like a million other songs. So I know it's not just like a one thing for this. If you guys know where that is, drop it in the comments. You will like save my life, please.
Please. Now I will sample it myself if anyone finds it. And then I will
Yes.
include that next time I play it on drums. So yes, let us know.
Amen. Yeah. But yeah, what do you guys think?
Just this high level of respect for each other on the song, for each of the members. They each try to play with each other. There's a lot of listening going on. They had fun, of course, but I think there's just like a respect level at this point. Not that there wasn't, but I just feel they are more conscious of each other's contributions and what they can do with the song. So I really admire that. You can really hear the friendship even more strongly in a song like this. So I just wanted to point that out. That's my impression of the overall package of the song. So
Yeah, there used to be a magazine called Guitar School. Like 30 years ago, there were just a collection of guitar magazines that existed, but that's where people were learning things since the internet was really non-existent. And Getty had a comment in an interview in Guitar School where he was saying that that he and Alex jamming out instrumental ideas was basically like recess for them. So yeah, like you're saying, you can hear the fun, you can hear the friendship going back to junior high, and just the idea that, as I say, compared to Where's My Thing, it's very relaxed, and like was it Ryder that you might have said it earlier, as far as just the dark themes on this album, from Nobody's Hero and Cold Fire and whatnot, that it's sort of the song without lyrics is the upbeat bright song in some ways.
Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting song, track list wise in the album. I feel like it coming towards the end, and being kind of this little, it bounces between moods. It's a little ambiguous and like how people will feel about it when they listen to it. But I think it's really good. I think even that it comes in the later in the track list, I think it does a really good job of kind of breaking up the pace and kind of bringing this, like you guys said, fun little moment between the band. You can definitely hear the camaraderie and just the interplay between them all throughout the track. And it's just a little amazing way to start bringing Counterparts to a close. Just another little idea about this song. I just think it's great. So I guess that kind of wraps up our discussion on the studio version of the song. But as always, we're going to talk about which one's our favorite live version. So if I'm not mistaken, I think the only live albums this was officially released on were Different Stages, Live in Rio, and Time Machine. That all three of those?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm pretty sure those are the three, but so let's kind of pick our favorite out of all of those. I would say personally, probably my favorite, the one that remedies the biggest issue I have with the song, the whole bass solo at the end. I will have to give it to Time Machine live in Cleveland, because holy crap, I've never heard a greater bass player than Geddy Lee in that bass solo at the end of that song. Oh my God. That is everything that I've ever wanted from a Geddy Lee bass solo and more. It's just phenomenal. I think the way that even Alex and Neil kind of just carry it out and kind of not necessarily deconstruct but Alex slowly starts to drop out and it kind of just focuses mostly on the interplay between Geddy and Neil. I think it's just super, super awesome. And I love that it ends on just a slick little Geddy line and just bam. Super powerful ending to that awesome instrumental. Really gave it the ending that I think it deserved. However, I will give a very strong honorable mention to the Rush in Rio version of this song, because I was watching the live version of it before we hopped on here. And I personally think that that is the tightest version of the song. Now, all the other versions of it are great, but I think that just when they're playing together, I just feel like all their little moments where they interact with each other are just so tight. I just love that version. Rob, what's your favorite version?
I would say Different Stages, because I went to see that tour and it was the first time I got to hear the song live at Jones Beach. and it was great. I didn't get to see the Counterparts tour, so to hear that song live for the first time in person was like such a potent experience. I would definitely tie marks with the Time Machine for sure. I enjoyed too Rush and Rio. I definitely enjoy what they did there. Not too shabby either with having the sort of the swollen tendons on his fingers to be able to play that section. So on the Rush and Rio version.
Yeah.
So, but for me, different stages would be the one. So
Yeah. Alex, what about you?
Yeah, that is a difficult one to really choose because I actually was listening to Rush and Rio today. I was listening to different stages yesterday. I did see the Counterparts tour. I did see the Test for Echo tour. I love the Different Stages album overall, especially right when it came out. It was just everything. Uh, yeah, I do feel like Time Machine, like you're saying that there's a certain magic to it, and it is really difficult to choose between them. Honestly, it is because they all offer something. I mean, like Rob said, the fact that Getty's wrist had issue, but we're flying to another continent. We got to deliver. But yeah, there was something about the Time Machine thing as far as just like you say the bass solo because it's all a lot of it really is about Getty's bass solo with it.
Yeah, for sure. So Tal, what's yours?
Yeah, so this is a tough question because I don't think I have one like concrete favorite. Uh, I have different favorites for like different reasons. So of course, Time Machine for sure, out of the three recordings on live albums, has the wildest bass solo at the end by Getty. But I can't say for sure that the rest of the song is my favorite from the Time Machine version. I think the mix lacks that reverb and that like and the feeling of soaring in the clouds, especially in those atmospheric sections. I don't think I think Rio from the stadium, of course, really captures that well. And also different stages by the incredible production quality on the album. Probably the last like I would say different stages could have been the last like extremely on sounding live album, but that's a conversation for another day. Um, are you guys still there? Come to me.
Yeah.
We're here. And actually, even freezing, even buffering, you still created a new roundtable as far as referencing the sound of the live albums.
Hmm.
Last like 30 seconds, you guys froze on my screen. I think that you said that was important.
I heard just about everything. I think we got it all.
Yeah, so actually I said earlier that I had a little fact about that synth sample. So if you guys um listen to the studio version of Leave That Thing Alone and then compare it with the live versions, you'll find that they actually start that synth sample, that loop, at a different point. So in the studio version, they actually started on the and. Then on most live versions, they've actually moved it over to beat one and actually kind of like that. It gives a punch like a again, listen to that. And I mean, on Time Machine though, actually did it like that on that tour. But it seems like in Cleveland for the DVD, they actually made a little mistake. And Neil actually came in a one like an E too late. So basically it would be ba-dum 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 ba-dum. So now it starts on the one E and of the like the four E and yeah. So
I
until
know
they
exactly what you're
resample it.
talking
So
about.
that kind of changes the feel of the song a lot. And I actually like how they did on Counterparts tour on different stages, where the drums come in right away, instead of just opening with the keyboards, because they actually did start doing that on Vapor Trails tour and onwards, where they would just open for 4 bars with the keyboards alone, and then they would all come in. So or just Neil or Alex. So I kind of like when they start straight with the drums. But yeah, I guess to sum up my point, all versions have things I like more than others. I guess if I had to pick one that I want to listen to most often, I might go Rio actually, because I just think like I think it does the best job at getting that studio feel for the guitar solo of that, of the reverb and the high and the mixing of the highs and the lows, Getty's gnarly bass kind of does a good job with that. It's very high in the mix. And then there's so much echo on Alex's guitar because it seems like it echoes through the chambers of the whole, ginormous Maracana Stadium. So even if that live album had some issues mix wise, I think for that song, it actually I think sounds kind of perfect. So that's what I think.
Awesome. All right. Well, there you go. That's our thoughts on Leave That Thing Alone. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video if you liked it. Ring the bell so you know when all of our other roundtables and our other shows are coming out. What do you think about Leave That Thing Alone? Let us know down below. If you want to be on a roundtable, reach out to us. Check out our merch down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching.